When you hear the name Josephine Baker, you probably picture the dazzling lights of jazz-age Paris, right? The iconic banana skirt, the trailblazing performances, but that's only half the story. Behind the curtain, this global superstar was living a double life, a secret one forged in the heart of World War II. This is the incredible story of how an entertainer became one of the French Resistance's most important spies.
I mean, really think about that for a second. How does one of the most famous, most photographed, most visible people on the entire planet just disappear into the shadows to become a spy? It seems completely impossible. Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together right now.
And this just says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the icon, the Black Venus of Paris, a true force of nature on stage. And on the other, Sub-Lieutenant Baker of the French Air Force. These weren't just costume changes. They were two sides of the same woman fighting a secret war in plain sight.
So her journey from the stage to spycraft, it all kicked off right on the edge of World War II, as all of France was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash with Nazi Germany.
You see, Captain Abte was on the hunt for what he called honorable correspondents, basically volunteer spies who could get into places that normal agents couldn't even dream of. And who had better access than the most famous woman in all of Paris? When he approached Josephine Baker, he found more than just a willing celebrity. He found a patriot who was ready to go all in.
But to really get why she would risk absolutely everything for France, we have to rewind a bit, back to her childhood in America. Because her loyalty to France wasn't just handed over. Believe me, it was earned.
Talk about a stark contrast. On the left, that's the America she grew up in, segregated, violent. As a kid, she actually witnessed the horrific East St. Louis race riots. But on the right, that's Paris, a city that didn't just accept her, it crowned her a queen. For Josephine, this fight against the Nazis, it was deeply, deeply personal.
So for her, this wasn't some abstract political battle. The Nazis represented the absolute worst of the racism she had escaped. France, on the other hand, had given her everything: freedom, fame, a sense of dignity. She felt like she owed France a debt she could never fully repay, but she was sure going to try.
Okay, so her motivation was rock solid. But how in the world did she actually pull it off? Well, her greatest weapon as a spy wasn't some high-tech gadget or a fake passport. It was her own blinding, spectacular fame.
That number, $250 a week, is what she was offered to perform in Paris back in 1925. I know it might not sound like much now, but back then, it was an absolutely astronomical amount of money. It shot her into a different stratosphere, making her a global sensation almost overnight.
She wasn't just a singer, you know? She was a full-blown phenomenon, the most photographed woman in the world. She casually walked her pet cheetah, Chiquita, down the streets of Paris. She was everywhere. And that extreme visibility, that constant spotlight, well, it turned out to be the perfect camouflage.
And that's the absolute genius of it. Think about it. When Josephine Baker's entourage swept through a border crossing, the guards were totally starstruck. They wanted an autograph, not to do a thorough search. High-ranking Nazi officials were desperate for an invitation to her parties, just to be near a star, while she was there, listening, memorizing everything, right under their noses.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. How did she actually do the work? Well, her methods were just as creative and daring as any of her stage shows.
The core of her spycraft wasn't about breaking codes. It was something way cleverer. It's a technique called steganography. It's a fancy word, but the idea is simple and brilliant. You don't hide the meaning of the message. You hide the very existence of the message itself. You put the secret right out in the open, where nobody would ever think it look.
And here are just a few of her ingenious methods. Her sheet music was her go-to tool. She'd write out detailed intelligence, notes on German troop movements, airfield locations, right onto the page using invisible ink made from lemon juice. For really sensitive stuff, she'd pin tiny notes or microfilm right to her underwear, because who was going to dare strip search the great Josephine Baker? Nobody.
So a typical mission looks something like this. She'd go to these lavish embassy parties, charming diplomats and Axis officers. She'd listen, soak up every detail about troop locations or harbor defenses. Then, she'd get that information down on her sheet music and just waltz across the border for her next performance. Incredible.
And her work didn't stop with smuggling intel. She put her money and her home on the line.
Her beautiful castle became a command center for the resistance. She hid fighters, she sheltered Jewish refugees, she even stored weapons down in her cellar. She was all in. For all of this incredible bravery, the woman who showed up in France as an entertainer would be celebrated as one of the nation's greatest military heroes.
And let's be clear, these are not some kind of honorary awards. These are France's highest military honors for bravery. The legendary General de Gaulle himself presented her with the Legion of Honor. She wasn't just helping out. She was a formally enlisted officer in the French Air Force who risked her life time and time again.
This wasn't some quiet act of rebellion either. This was loud, open defiance. When she was touring to entertain the troops, she'd end her shows by unfurling the Free French flag, a huge symbol of resistance. It was a bold, in-your-face message to the Nazis.
Those were her exact words to Captain Abdi the moment he asked her to become a spy. No hesitation, no second thoughts. It just shows you how deep her commitment ran. France had given her a life, and she was absolutely ready to give that life right back.
And this is the ultimate honor. The Pantheon in Paris is where France's greatest heroes are laid to rest. We're talking about giants like Voltaire, Victor Hugo, Marie Curie. Her induction there solidifies her legacy forever, not just as a superstar, but as a hero who helped save the French Republic.
So, an entertainer, a spy, and a hero. She took her fame and turned it into a weapon. She turned her art into espionage, and she fought for the country that gave her a home. Her story really makes you think, and it proves that sometimes the brightest lights are the ones that cast the most powerful shadows.